No,
Hello,
69.
everybody. Whoa. It's episode 69 of Topline. This is Sam Jacobs. We have no comment on anything except what's happening in go-to-market. We're joined by Armand Farrokh, the host of 30 Minutes to President's Club, an author. You got a book coming out, if I'm not mistaken, Armand, or has it already come out? And also one of the top outbound sales minds in the world. And we're joined by my co-hosts, Asad Zaman and AJ Bruno. Armand, am I right? You have a book coming out, or is out?
It is about to come out. So August 14th it drops. Pre-order available now. It's called Cold Calling Sucks, and that's why it works. So, Sam, we've riffed it back in the past. You know, I'm a big cold calling guy. And so step-by-step guide on cold calling strangers. And I think we're talking about all the ways to do outbound without cold calling today. So it's a little bit paradoxical. So,
I love that. That's awesome. Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
If you're looking to revolutionize your account-based strategy, then look no further than Terminus. Taking a unified approach to ABM, Terminus offers an all-in-one platform to streamline your sales and marketing efforts, enhance customer engagement, and drive real results. With features like advanced targeting, robust analytics, and seamless integrations, Terminus empowers your team to work smarter, not harder. Don't miss out on the future of unified go-to-market. Visit terminus.com today and take your go-to-market strategy to the next level.
Well, we're excited to have you. And you had me on 30 Minutes to President's Club a while ago. And, you know, the other talent that Armand has that not a lot of people might know about is his ability to draw meaningful diagrams that articulate interesting points on the fly with precision in ways that feel like you have a background as an editorial cartoonist or something.
Speaking of which, if I wanted to show some data live on this, do you do video as well?
No, this is audio mainly. But
okay, well, I might pull something up for you and then explain what I'm walking through.
I love that. Does
Riverside do this? Can we actually? Do we have
I'm sure ability?
69 episodes in, we're like, does this do a screen share?
Why don't we kick things off? I'm going to hand the mic over to Asad. Asad got a new microphone that he's struggling to use. Nobody can hear him, but he'll say a word or two, and we'll all strain our ears. Asad, over to you.
Armand, it's good to have you here. Hopefully you can hear me. So we've gone through this really interesting period where since 2009 till about the mid of 2022, we were in this low interest rate environment where driving demand was just much easier. And then we got inflation, interest rates went up, and they had downstream effects on fundraising as well as on the ability to create a spot for a sales team and a salesperson. And at the same time as driving demand has gotten harder, we've had the introduction of generative AI. And this is a phase shift. There's huge implications on the future of go-to-market because of this technology. So these are these two things that have been top of mind for us. And one of the things I think about a lot is definitions. One of the few lessons I remember from university is this professor who made us all write down the meaning of love in a room of 60 people, and then made each person stand up and say what they wrote. No two people wrote the same thing. And the point was that communication is not on a one-to-one ratio. You at best know what somebody else is insinuating. So right now, we go online, we hear all these people talk about outbound as if we're talking about the same thing. So maybe the right place for us to start is, how do you view and define outbound today?
To me, outbound is anytime someone is not coming and knocking on your door, but you're going and trying to pick a customer. So, for example, someone could demonstrate an intent signal, like they could open your emails, visit a pricing page or whatever it might be. But to me, if they're not actually reaching out to you, doing outbound, you're just doing more warm outbound. And the way that you typically do that is through cold email, cold outreach, cold door knocking, cold LinkedIn outreach, cold calling, etc.
So with that definition, so essentially us being proactive in market, everything other than people coming to us and saying, yo, I want to buy your stuff is outbound. Okay, great. So now when we think about AI plus outbound, it feels like the future is spray and pray tech on steroids. And the idea here is that if you look back a few years ago, the introduction of technologies like Outreach and SalesLoft, great technology to build and release to the market, but salespeople used it with their worst tendencies in mind, which is praying and praying. And now this tech seems to just exasperate that. Is that the future as you see it, or do you see a brighter, more exciting future with the combination of these two things?
It's so bizarre when you look at what an outbound organization actually is today. So I think there are two things that just make it, I want to paint what it looks like today just to show how ridiculous it is.
Ain't it, baby?
So when people are sending cold emails, you don't just send like 100 cold emails anymore. You have to set up like 10 subdomains. So for example, if I was like topline.com, it would be like topline.co, topline.xyz, toplineai.co. I'm going to set up like 10 subdomains and 10 email handles under each of those domains, where I can send no more than 40 emails per day. But in total, I will be able to send 400 emails across all 10 of my subdomains. And the reason that I share this is I was coaching an early stage founder. I mentioned to you guys earlier that I do some go-to-market advisory. And I had them hire an SDR, and their SDR was ramping up volume like a normal SDR would. And they were getting 10% email open rates. And I was like, what in the world? And so we had to talk to these deliverability consultants who set up 10 inboxes for us to send emails from different email handles because there's so much noise. The same thing goes for cold calling. If parallel dialers rotate, like every dial, it rotates a different phone number, because your phone number, by the time you dial 10 times in an hour, you get marked as spam. And so there's just so much volume. And so you have these like mass scale volume masking tactics that prevent you from getting hit with the spam filter. But Asa, to your point, there's going to be a point where like what happens when everyone is sending 10 emails from 10 domains every single minute? Like your inbox is just going to be cluttered with nonsense perpetually. And so I'll be honest, like once everyone gets good at using these tactics, I don't know what's going to happen to the email channel, because that is far and above the worst and most flooded channel of them all.
And still the most the most used channel, which is why everybody's doing it. It's still fascinating that, for all Stuart talked about like Slack killing email and how email is dead, it's still the place that we all open up our workday by opening up email and figuring, or at least I do. I don't know if Asad and AJ are now on Roam, so maybe they have reinvented productivity and they're doing they're just thinking thoughts and everything happens instantly. But only to confirm your point, Armand, we send a newsletter now. We send a Topline newsletter, and a lot of people have said it's the best newsletter in the history of newsletters. In fact, Donald Trump mentioned it, and Elon Musk, and this was a thing that Joe Biden, Musk, and Obama all agreed on, and Kamala Harris. Everybody's talking about the Topline newsletter edited by Asad Saman. But the point is not that all of these people think it's so amazing, which it is, but that we spent 2 weeks warming it up. We had to spend 2 weeks warming up deliverability. And when we first sent it, I think we had abysmal open rates. What did we have, Asa? We had like 5% or something.
Like
now it's up to 30%. Yeah. But it took a lot of work, exactly to your point, Armand.
Yeah. And so literally what it means to start doing outbound, independent of how many people you're going to hire, how many folks you're going to do it with, if you're doing any reasonable amount of volume, you probably need to send a couple hundred emails per week. If you're doing mid-market sales, super enterprise, a little bit different. You literally have to set up your domains. You have to warm up those domains. And there are these email warming tools that they literally send haikus to each other. It's hilarious. Like I've set them up on an inbox, and for 2 weeks they'll be sending haikus to each other and poems to each other to warm up the inbox, because it looks like two people are having an email conversation. And
This
then
is wild.
That's
once you have
ridiculous.
this network of people
This
sending
is true.
haikus to each other,
That's crazy.
It's actually true. AJ, you've seen it. You know what I'm talking
I've literally watched this, because when you do this with as a part Clay, as a part of the work stream, you like have to do this on the front end. And we had a whole like enablement training session with our sales team where Brandon Smith, our sales ops leader, took us through how it actually like had screenshots of the haikus. It was great. They weren't very good. I think they could have done better. Like that was disappointing haikus as well. Also, by the way, I'll just throw out that Sam's been trying to buy Topline.com for like bidding for the last year. Hasn't successfully done it yet. So Armand, if you have any tips there on how we can do that, we're all ears.
not my expertise, but the number one newsletter in the world. I'm sure you guys can figure it out. So.
As Donald Trump
Thank
said.
you for saying that. I've heard people say that.
I guess the issue in my mind is that you look at things like even Clay, that seems to be a step up in terms of list formation. I'll enrich this list with all sorts of interesting data points. And then you've got these AI tools that will write what in reality is a really bad email. It's bland. They all looked the same. I saw some CEO of one of these companies post that you have 2.7 seconds per email. That's how long people read it for. And so you write emails with 35 words in them. And then we wonder why we're not getting responses, because we're not really saying anything. And whatever we are saying, we're saying badly. So when you say that these reps have to send so many emails, and why? Like, maybe they don't. Like, if they were actually looking at one account at a time and writing an email at a time that's actually personalized to that person, not contextualized, which is what these things do. They don't personalize. You actually personalize it and you target the person. That should potentially also be able to be a productive strategy. Like, why not lean into that? Why this like belief that it has to be hundreds of emails?
Yeah. So I think the tricky thing is, if you look at SDR quotas over the last X number of years, they haven't gone up that much. If you look at them, like if I go to most SDR teams, you look at a lot of SDR quotas, you'll see whatever, 12 to 16 qualified opportunities in a mid-market environment.
12 meetings a month.
Exactly. It doesn't look that different. It didn't look that different 5 years ago. It doesn't look that different today. But the volume has gone up so much. And so the problem, Asad, is even if you have a really good personalized email, it's buried under so much more stuff than it was before, that other people are figuring out how to send personalized emails at scale using basic email automation tools and more advanced ones. And so what happens, and Sam, to your question earlier of like, or Asad, to your question earlier of, is this just like the world we're going to live in? If you look at what always happens, is volume goes up and then the top 10% of performers still get the replies. And so the baseline for what is good is just going to go up. So I'll give you a good example. I'm coaching SDRs. I built Carta's SDR program. It was meant to just try to get SDRs to do basic if this then that personalization, which is, for example, I would say like if they raised in the last 3 months, hit them with the 4 on an A talk track. If they were coming up on their fundraising anniversary, that means they needed a 4 on an A valuation, hit them with this 4 on an A talk track. If they were growing by 10% or more, say, hey, notice you were growing by this many employees and you have job postings for this, this, and this. It was a glorified if this, then that automation, but we just had SDRs doing it. And the SDR job would actually get really boring once you got good at it, because you'd realize that there were the 5 top triggers for why someone should buy. And then you just put those in a semi-human email. And so all AI has done is it's just raised the floor for the bad SDRs at the beginning. And it's made it really easy to do that basic if this, then that personalization. Where teams are getting really good at this is they're able to use that as their baseline personalization. But oftentimes what you would do is you would only personalize the first email because you didn't have time to personalize 14 emails. And now what's happened is every email is reaching a baseline level of personalization that's like not great. And the best sellers add the twist at the end of it for the key accounts.
What's the answer? So is the answer, you wrote a book about outbound. Like, what is how do we, what's the right way to do outbound in 2024? Is it, how big should the team be? What sequences or cadence should they be employing? How should we be thinking about it? What's your answer, Armand?
Yeah. So the first is let's just start with the email channel. And if I'm working with an earlier stage founder who has a ton of white space, honestly, I'm going to say there's not a ton of great use in cold calling. And it doesn't make sense for you to do a ton of one-to-one personalization because you have all of this white space. So what would I do? I would work with Clay and I would essentially be like, okay, this is my TAM. I would get really good at the targeting. I would say, these are my different segments of accounts. And then I would do mass scale email campaigns and I would send several hundred emails per week when I know I have that much white space where even if I'm burning half of the accounts that I'm reaching out to, it doesn't really matter because, again, I have white space. The problem is once you start to get saturated in your TAM, very rarely does a company just indefinitely have the ability to just like keep frolicking in all of the white space. And so for companies that I've seen that have some sales reps and they have territories, they have books, essentially with a bit more of like an overlay model. And so an overlay model would say like, okay, I'm going to put in some sort of activity rule where it's like for the last 30 days, if no one has reached out to this account, we're allowed to send AI emails to it, for instance. What can happen is based on when people engage with those emails, we can assign dial tasks to have a cold call on the people who are actually engaging with those mass scale emails. And then we can have SDRs work and do more personalized outreach on the key accounts that are really worth having the human touch on. And so it's really just allowing you to fill the white space in your TAM and fill a lot of the gaps of the accounts that you're not necessarily working. And then have the SDRs focus on the things that only a human can do, which would be super personalized emails and making the cold calls on the accounts themselves.
That's really interesting. I guess, I still wonder that at the end of the day, I get 10, 20 cold emails a day. I open it and I haven't even read it. I'm just like glancing at it, but in a hazy way to look at structure. And I can tell that this is one of these automated emails and I don't even care what it says. I just like kill it right there. And so I feel like everybody is using these tools to kind of look the same and say the same bland things, with the difference being my product, my client, who I've done this for. But it's so bad and boring. And then I worry that you've got salespeople who are joining these teams and their first role is in a role like this. What foundation is this building? We talk about quota attainment of AEs down the line, and we say, oh, it's so bad. I think part of it is because they have such bad foundational training. Like when we were trained, you had like phone numbers and a person's like profile high level, and you just had to like do a lot very different things to try and get their attention compared to what people have to do right now. So I think I feel sad about the state of sales the way it is. I do want to get your point in terms of white space versus not. And it seems like one of the stats we've been covering is how many more tech companies are there every year. And there's about 30% more tech companies every single year. So there's less and less white space. Categories are more saturated. There's a lot more competition, less differentiators. So it seems like what you're saying is if you find yourself in a space like that, then you have to take a way more hand-to-hand combat against the market type of approach and use these other tools sparingly. Whereas if you're the lucky few that just has white space, you run at it with all the bland, non-personalized messages you can throw out because you have the ability to do that for a short period of time. So take advantage of that. Is that the point? That take advantage of white space if you have it? But for majority of the people you're probably speaking to, that's not their reality.
And so if you assume that someone is working a book of 300 accounts, to me that still means there's a reasonable amount of white space in your territory. And Sam, you know how this goes. If you pulled a report of show me every one of those 300 accounts and show me how many of those accounts haven't been reached out to in the last 60 days, a good chunk of them would not have been reached out to in the last 60 days. And so it'll essentially allows you to go wall to wall on your territory much earlier. But Asad, to your point, I would actually argue that for the last couple years, the SDR job has not looked like a sales job. It's looked ridiculous. I mean, if you actually just look at what the job is, it's 90% scrubbing data. It's like, okay, I need to pull a list of 50 accounts, and then I need to scrub the 25 that are crappy ones, that are dead, that aren't good, that don't have the triggers that I'm looking for, all of that stuff. And then I need to go and scrape one by one, above the line, below the line, around the line, et cetera, the right different contacts. And I need to like pull the 5 different phone numbers. And if the first provider doesn't have it, I need to pull it from the second one. And oftentimes what happens is I've seen amazing sellers who would have the ability to hold a call with a customer not make it because they don't know the CRM jockey game. Like they actually don't know how to be these CRM jockeys to scrape the data, to get all of these accounts into Salesforce and then get those into outreach and then get the outreach sequences running. You have a 50% IT degree to do prospecting today, it seems. And so I actually, a lot of these tools, if done correctly, should allow the sellers to focus more on the real selling activities, which is if you have even like a centralized growth marketing function or a centralized emailing function where a lot of the mass scale emailing is being done and you're not worried about these horrendous, like horribly written SDR emails going out, then what can happen is you can be like, all right, SDR, here are your 25 accounts this week that you need to go super deep and wide into. And you need to find a way to break into these accounts. You're going to go look for referrals. You're going to go super targeted. You're going to send them something in the mail. You're going to call them on the phone. And that looks more like selling today than I think selling the SDR job has looked like in the last couple of years. But I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, it's basically data entry at this point. I also appreciate that Asad only has 10 to 20 cold emails a day. How is that even possible? Sam, I guarantee you have closer to 100 to 150 a day.
A day?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have 100. I have 100 to 150. Your
40 to 50 personalized emails, 40 to 50 direct emails to me, probably 150 that are like including probably 200 that includes
200.
spam.
Yeah. Asad's doing something we're not doing well. Like it's just at 8 a.m. It's just a constant delete. But to your point, Armand, the like data entry aspect of it is not real sales. And I actually would ask kind of similar to Sam's question, which is like, what's changed in 2024? I mean, you're a big proponent of leading with context, of having more of a visceral reaction, of not saying like, hey, am I catching you at a good time? But what you're describing is 90% not that. And so how do you teach sales to SDR in today's world when your mode of like how you teach sales has just changed quite a bit drastically since your days at Carta?
Yeah. And so again, the number one thing that we tend to cover whenever we're teaching people how to do outbound is how do you lead with context gets you to come off as a human, right? So for example, when we're teaching our cold call openers, the number one thing that we teach is not to lead with a permission-based opener or how's your day going or did I catch you at a bad time? But if I was cold calling Sam, I would say like, hey, Sam, we work with the guys over at 30 Minutes Presence Club. It's Armand from Pave. Have you heard her name tossed around? And so those are the types of things that only a human can do. And so to that point, AJ, is you can scale that in cold email. The bar has just gotten much higher. And so the bar is no longer, hey, noticed you fundraised last year. Typically, when you fundraised last year, you have this problem. Do you want to buy a valuation from Carta? Now the bar is, hey, I was listening to the episode that you had on Topline about this, and you had a great riff back in Asad on this, and it made me think about that. And if anything, a lot of the AI stuff can help you automate a lot of that research and that context and get it for you much more quickly in a way that normally you'd have to scour the web. And then you as the human can stitch together that message on your own. And also to your point, to be honest, a lot of the AI messaging is not there yet. It is better than the average SDR, but the average SDR is not that good. And so now what's happened is, again, like the trigger-based email template of notice this thing, we do this thing, that's the baseline. But the best SDRs are doing on top of that, and the floor has just gone up. And so
I think that's an important point, which is that a lot of the data that we get from the market in terms of write emails with 7 words and write them so that a person can read them in 47 milliseconds is based on a data set that has 95% bad sellers feeding their conversion rates and their activity into it. So it's like we're trying to learn from this horrible data set. And usually when I sit down with really elite sellers, which I have the privilege of doing in my life, they feel that the alpha is in doing things that is just different. They'll write long form emails. We had Tomas Dungus on, and he used to spend 3 days researching a company and then write like a long message to them to try and get into become an investor in the company. And he had like an 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 response rate.
He said 100%. I think he actually
100%.
literally said 100% hit rate on those emails.
When I was in university, I wrote an essay of an email to Mark Cuban to try and get him to consider investing in our company. It was literally an essay of an email. It wasn't like, it was really long. And he read the whole thing and responded. And I was a nobody back then. So it's like, I do think there's a lot of alpha in growing against the grain. And you don't see a lot of people do that. AJ, how does this sound? You're a commercial expert. You've seen 3 generations of sales, your generation, the spray and pray tech in ZERP generation, and now this. Like, how does all this make you feel?
I appreciate that Armand said that I have all the riffs on Topline. He said, AJ, I really love all your riffs on the Topline. That would get my attention because it's true. It was this factual statement. But Armand's right. Anytime I think about my messaging, out has always been in this like very clear, critical research. Like that's the things that make this interesting. That's where we as CEOs, we as sales leaders have an opportunity to empower our teams and just be really passionate about the problems that we're solving, not the features, not the like underlying pieces of it. The 409A is a great example. Carta, you would say, oh, they didn't have an outbound issue. Everyone went to Carta. But the truth of the matter is when you're selling a 409A product that is something that was probably pretty new when Armand was there because it was part of the company that I think they bought from SVB in terms of doing that. It was a services play. It was actually probably a little bit more difficult. There were other solutions that were out there that were really well known, and Carta didn't have that as well known. So when you do it, you have to like truly understand in today's world, you truly have to understand what are like the mechanics that make a 409A unique. Repricing. Did the SDR team know what a repricing was at that time? Probably not, because everyone was up and to the right. But today's world, it's like, hey, I know this is something that you're probably going to attract executives to your company. They are going to want to look at the cap table and better understand what the price is. How do they get to that $500 billion unicorn status that you all just talked about, your $1.2 billion on TechCrunch 2 years ago? That's not the reality of the world. So like, let us help you do this. Or Pave for total rewards. Like, hey, we have more fidelity and data on compensation because we have this freemium offering that everyone's opted into, that we have the actual data, real-time dynamic data of what's going on today that no one else in the market has. Like, that's how you have to go out and sell to in today's world. Just you have to be really passionate about what it is you're selling. And that's the challenge, is that I don't think a lot of sellers or SDRs are really passionate because they're spending 90% of their time doing data entry. That's the problem. I'm going to get off my riff high horse.
It's what's funny is I'm a little bit biased in this regard, but you're seeing a slight return of the call center model, where a lot of times, because the bar for email is just like so mediocre at this point, is you have these teams that are sending these automated emails. Can't get my SDRs to do this any better than the if this then that stuff. And then I'm going to assign dial tasks and have my SDRs just rip cold calls all day using a parallel dialer. And some of these SDR teams are doing like 400, 500 cold calls a week, which you didn't see that when sequences first came out with.
That's cool, actually, in a way. Because
cool.
I can tell you this much, like back in the day, if somebody offered me a job where most of my time I'd be scraping lists, I wouldn't take it. Like I can't live my life that way. Yeah. And so it's nauseating.
That's no way to live.
That's no way to live. But if somebody said, hey, and I did these jobs where you're just cold calling all day and you're trying to get to people and you're using yourself to try to convince them to take them away. That's fun and exciting. I'm down to do that. So I think actually what the role was was a disincentive for a lot of people that have all the right characteristics to be a future great salesperson to say, no, thank you. And now maybe that future great salesperson's like, oh yeah, I'm down to do this. Like talk to people. Yeah, that's what sales seems like. And I don't have to do this lead gen bad email thing. Somebody else does it sitting in marketing. That's not so bad.
I think where I'm coming out on all this, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but exactly. First of all, Tomas Tungus gets 100% replies because they, generally speaking, they know who Tomas Tungus is before he sends them an email. And what does that imply? I guess Reveal coined the term all bound. No, Reveal said near bound. But who coined the term all bound?
Partner
Do we know who that?
Or some
maybe
other partners.
That's where I'm coming out on this. There is no inbound versus outbound. It is the combination of blasting a message into the universe through the channels where your buyers congregate. And for us, it's LinkedIn, but it could be whatever channel where people are hanging out and giving their attention and putting unique ideas and insights out into the world so that you soften them up. Cold calling in the absence of any air cover from marketing, maybe it works once in a while, but it's a false dichotomy. It's a false distinction. You need the air cover for marketing. You need people to know who the brand is. They need to know who Topline is. They need to know who Armand is. They need to listen to 30 MPC. And then when you cold call them and they see that and they recognize the URL, they recognize the email, then they might be open to having a human conversation. I think either one of those things in isolation is not the key. I think the key is get really focused on your ICP, figure out where they hang out, blast messages out to them through traditional marketing channels, which we would call inbound, and then layer on outbound on top of it once you know that they're getting the message. Once you're retargeting with ads, once you're reshowing different kinds of messages, then you hit them with the outbound, and those things in combination work really well.
Correct. And that's, to that point, that's when the human selling actually begins.
Right, exactly.
I've already gotten some of these semi-automated emails. Now the human can step in and do the superhuman stuff. And that's actually selling. The actual cold calls, the actual DMing on LinkedIn, the trying to catch them at the event. And so again, it goes back to eventually, this should look more like selling in the future.
That's a really exciting future and probably a good place to end this conversation.
Well, by the way, the company is called Allbound. PartnerStack is a competitor to Allbound. So
I'm sorry.
I just messed that up.
Well, Allbound, if you want to give me $6,000 to $10,000 a month, I won't get it wrong in the future. I'm happy to advocate on your behalf. You've got a great little phrase there. Armand, thanks for joining us on the show. It was great having you. Give us the name of the book. When can we buy it? Where can we buy it? All that stuff.
Yeah, it's called Cold Calling Sucks, and that's why it works. Everyone can check it out wherever you buy books. By August 14th, it will be available. But 30mpc.com/book is where I direct most people, and you can preview chapter 1 for free. And it has talk tracks and templates, and it's backed by Gong Data and all that good stuff. So
awesome. Well, congrats on writing a book. I know it's hard, and good luck on the rollout.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Great.
Thanks, Armand.
Thanks.
Cheers.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Are you ready to revolutionize the way your team goes to market? Join us from October 14th to 16th in Austin, Texas for GTM 2024, the premier B2B SaaS conference where the world's top go-to-market executives learn, plan, and execute strategies that fuel growth. Expect 3 days packed with interactive sessions and panels addressing top-of-mind challenges, hands-on planning and forecasting workshops for 2025, and of course, plenty of networking opportunities. Whether you come alone or bring your entire leadership team, you'll find valuable insights and dedicated time to prepare for the year ahead. And be sure to stick around Austin for GTM 2024 awards, celebrating the top leaders in our industry. Ready to get a line and get ahead? Visit joinpavilion.com/GTM 2024 and use the code TOPLINE for 15% off your ticket. Details are in the show notes. Hope to see you in Austin.
Okay, so another conversation about the future of the sales and outbound. Part of it was actually a little bit more heartwarming than the previous conversations have been. The idea that salespeople will actually cold call and develop the skills to be able to catch somebody on a phone and convince them to do something, that's uplifting.
So uplifting.
Well, it does.
Who cares? This is all stupid. We're all going to die, Asad.
Asad, what do you have on the next topic on your docket? Because clearly Sam needs to move forward with it. All right.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
just kidding. I'm distracted. My dog Oswald continues to bark, and I keep putting it on mute and yelling at him. So
because that helps dogs. When you yell at them, they bark.
They love it, and then I give them a big kick. Just kidding. I would never touch him and give him kisses.
Sam seems like the person who screams at his dog with a smile and hence confuses the dog. He was like, "What just happened?"
Deadly accurate.
Okay, so let's actually transition to another topic, because Sam, you made a post that was super fascinating. And so the post was, in essence, that it's not the CEO's job to motivate people. Instead, the job is to harness the inherent motivation of person.
Asad, I don't want to interrupt you, but we do need to talk about what our guest. We can't just move on from our guest. What do we think? Fine. What do you think? Let's give a final takeaway, and then we can talk about my post.
Oh, you're fine.
I want to give Armand that service. I thought he's a really smart guy, and I think his book's going to be really interesting. And I think. And I think generic messaging is bad and personalized messaging is good, and everybody should write essays to Mark Cuban, and he will write you back.
He will. I like Armand a lot because I think he's saying something that I appreciate and I think had gone missing in our ecosystem for some time, which is pick up the phone and call people. And for all the people that say, oh, it's hard to connect with them, etc., we headhunt salespeople. And so in addition to developing business for our business, we also reach out to candidates all the time across all levels. And we laugh when we look at our connect rates. Like if we cold call a person, more than 6 times out of 10, we connect with them and we probably call them once or twice max. And
wow.
So, like people are.
Where do you get their number from?
We get it from a combination of Zoom and Apollo, and like we have like 3 or 4 different vendors, because that's part of the game, is like calling 3 numbers to be like which one's the right one. But when you get the right number, it's not hard to connect with people. At least salespeople in tech, it's not difficult. And so I think it's a lost art, and there's a lot of alpha in doing the thing that other people are too scared to do. And I do think it's a fair thing. I think people are afraid to do it. It's easier to send a bad email than pick up the phone and call somebody, because 1 or twice out of every 10 times, you don't get somebody that abuses you and screams at you and says mean things to you. And people are sensitive, and sellers from back in the day had thicker skin. So I think we are fearful of it, and we've gone away from it. But it's the thing that can make your go-to-market motion work. Kyle Norton, with his 9K ACV, made an SDR team work because they cold call, and it works. And so I really like what Armand's doing. I like his take on the future of this entire function, which is you've got this team of data people that are doing these bad emails, but you've actually got sellers that are going to be on phone calls, because I think that develops the right foundation for a seller to take to the rest of their career. And so that part makes me feel hopeful. I am so bearish on these tools. I hate these tools. Like, I'll be honest, I hate spray and pray tech. I hate tools that drive more automation and that say things like personalization at scale. It's an oxymoron, doesn't exist, doesn't make sense. I think anything that these tools like Clay can do is not personalization. And I, till date, have never responded to one of these emails.
So you're saying you're bearish on Clay?
I'm bearish on these things, like all of these, like not to call Clay out specifically. I think tools that do this type of stuff, I think they are built by people that don't understand sales, and they'll work. They'll work because you have this large TAM that you go after, and you find that one company, like he said, that has white space and it works for them, and that becomes a case study, and then everybody else does it and it doesn't really work for them, and it's like, no, because you don't have a great product. And maybe there's a point there. Maybe the fact that if you have amazing product market fit, or if you have no competitors, you can spray and pray and you'll be laughing all the way to the bank. But for the rest of us, sales requires a little bit more creativity and grindiness, and tenacity. And I think tools that tell us that that's not necessary, that it's about saying the right thing at the right time, not the right way. I don't love those tools. They might work out to be great companies.
Yeah, I want to hear AJ. What do you think?
Well, I understand the bearishness part of it, especially from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, if Sam, I ask you, and I probably have the same answer, like 90% of the cold outreach that I get is from recruiting firms. And that's the area where I'm like, but it's always the same story. It's always the same like value prop. It never really resonates well with me. I've answered 2 cold calls today. One was someone asking if I was selling my airplane, which I'm not, but that's a timing thing. It's like, that's just literally a timing thing. And I appreciated the call. I was waiting for another call. And the other one was a recruiting firm. And I didn't end up, I just was moving on. And so I'm pretty bearish because honestly, the outreach that I get using these tools is blah. And also, by the way, I appreciate that Armand's trying to bring a breath of fresh air to an industry that we're just so tired of talking. I mean, there's a reason that Sam said, can we move, like, let's just move on, because it's such a tiring topic, right? Yeah. It is. It's a topic that we've just so tired about.
I think what Asad said is super interesting because he said it right. Like basically productivity, anything that makes it easy to do something that used to be hard. I don't know if I'm going to say this the right way, but it's just interesting that like because communication and somebody's attention is an arms race, you know, and it's like you sure. I mean, and you can send an email, you can reach out to somebody and get their attention today, but then everybody starts doing it. And then all of a sudden it stops working. And it's this constantly shifting bullseye, where, as Asad said, right, like to generate alpha, you always have to be doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing. And what everybody else is doing is always changing because they're also, it's like this, you know, they're all chasing each other like a bunch of kids playing soccer. They're all chasing the ball, and the ball is somebody's attention, and everybody's like running after it. And that tells me that like systems of, we talk about this stack of system of record, system of intelligence, and system of engagement. And that fundamentally, isn't that one of the reasons maybe why like Gong, and although Gong's not maybe it is. Gong's actually a system. What do we think is it a system of engagement, system of intelligence?
That's trying to be now both, but it started as
maybe that's why like systems of engagement are fundamentally less valuable, because like there is no sustainable alpha in like this is a unique way to get somebody's attention, because everybody's attention is constantly shifting based on whatever's shiny, bright, and new. What do you guys think?
It feeds to insecurity, I think, a little bit, right? Like insecurity, and also this tendency to try to do things that are easier over time. Like it's easier to send 1,000 emails blandly written than it is to reach out to one person to say one thing and figure out how to convert enough of them to make the unit economics in your business work.
I mean, the system of engagement is maybe less valuable if the action that is being provided, if it's just that not a very valuable action that's being inputted into the platform. Like whatever, in my mind, system of engagement can actually be the most powerful, because it's what it's like the model that leads to that system of intelligence to help. It's a major part of the feedback.
You have to look at like whatever the workflow. If there's a workflow, if there's an inverse network effect workflow, where the more people adopt this workflow, the less valuable the workflow, then that business that sells that workflow has to have, a tax on its valuation.
That's a really good point.
Like the more people that use outreach, the less valuable outreach is. That's just a fact. 100%. So what's outreach supposed to do in that environment? Well, I have an answer. Don't raise venture capital.
Yeah.
Build a PEG business funded by Topline Studios.
Oh my goodness. I don't think that's fair. But I don't think that's fair to the companies, because I think the intent is you're using your internal data for system of engagement. That data itself is really, really powerful. And in Outreach's world, it's like a Pavilion versus STA versus QuotaPath are using outreach fundamentally differently. And what I'm saying is the recruitment firms that reach out to me are all using it the same way. And that's what's
But
really
that's the
frustrating.
problem, AJ. So, AJ, tell me this. Like, what do you think when they say, we've heard all the people say, we're going to tell salespeople what to do? Oof, okay, fine. For a few hundred years, sales leaders have been telling salespeople what to do. Firstly, how many salespeople say yes, sir, and go and do all the things that they've been told to do? Salespeople are these unique human beings that decide that they don't create security for their families and themselves by taking something somebody else has built and selling it to somebody else, and making more than half of their money through successfully making that transaction happen. This is a unique type of human being that goes and pursues this career path versus all the other safer ways to make money. And now this person they're not the most agreeable people on earth. And so if they don't take the guidance of sales leaders, I don't think a little pop-up that says now do this thing is going to be this thing that everybody leans into. Number one. Second point is, what's it going to say that no human has ever said to a salesperson before? Like, what is the unique insight these tools are going to provide salespeople? Like, call this person next. Okay, like, is that so genius? Like, I don't get what they mean sometimes.
You are like hitting what's fundamentally broken about SaaS. You have marketing teams that are leading with this messaging and this positioning, but I don't think you have enough CEOs and founders that are creating movements around these like visionary, what does this actually look like in prescriptive ways? Because they don't know. You're talking about AI, you're talking about the future of sales. Like, you can't have, there's only going to be one right answer. And I don't think the outreaches, the gongs, the sales lofts, I don't think those CEOs have the answer. And that's why I've been very bearish. And I've said it multiple times that I don't think one of those companies will be the winner because of exactly what you just described, Asid.
Well, expand on that, please. I want to know. What do you mean? What did he just exactly say that they don't? Yeah, tell me.
Those companies, this is what I heard. So Asid, correct me if I'm wrong. Those companies are selling you, here's the easy button to automate your sales teams, to be the thing, through your revenue intelligence. Click here, it's done. And that's not what the world's going to look like. And that positioning and messaging will fail because it doesn't have the substance, the product to back it up.
Do you know what's going to happen? It's going to say these things, and a lot of people will buy it like, oh, wow, we're AI first. We bought this thing that's going to tell our salespeople what to do, and we want our salespeople to be more productive, so we're going to buy the tool that tells them how to sell. And then what's going to happen? The economy is not always going to be 0% interest rates. And when economies are hard, it's hard to sell. And these things won't work that well. And then what happens? You sit down and you evaluate your tool stack and you're like, oh, this thing that was supposed to tell our salespeople what to do so that they were extremely productive, but our salespeople aren't extremely productive. It's the same problem that a lot of sales trainers had coming into the downturn, that the sales trainers were fine when the interest rates were zero and they were doing all this sales training and those teams were performing. And then when the market turned, their unique training and insights couldn't move the needle. Not to say that they were bad trainers. It's just the way that world works, is that it's not easy. We're not doing easy things. And when the world changed and their stuff wasn't working for these companies anymore, what happened? Their revenue got cut in half, sometimes more than that. And now they're sitting there, licking their wounds. I think these companies, the reason I'm bearish on the category is I think of it as, can you build another Salesforce doing this? 35 billion in revenue. That's what meaningful organizations look like. I don't think there's another Salesforce in this. I don't even think there's a quarter of a Salesforce in this.
I love it. AJ, this is a good conversation. AJ, another great episode of Topline, by the way. And we're not done. I'm not wrapping anything up. So AJ, if press this button to automate your Salesforce or get revenue intelligence or whatever isn't the winning message. What is the winning message? Tell me the winning message.
Well, I can't tell you that because we're building it right now. And then my shout out was I'm going to do an early shout out. My shout out was going to go to Pattern Breakers by Mike Maples Jr. And in the book, Mike describes this idea of choice versus decision. This idea that Uber, Twitter, Airbnb are all choices. You either do them or you don't. You're not doing, I'm going to do Uber or taxi. Like, once you've made that decision to do Uber, you're doing Uber for the eternity of time. And if
you mean like as an entrepreneur?
as an entrepreneur and founder, like you have these insights, these unique insights that allow you to see the world differently, to see the future as it's going, what it's going to look like. And when everyone's going left, you're going right. So right now, everyone's saying we're going to automate the sales, that we're all going to have this chatbot, and Mark on here saying there's a sales engineer that's going to hang out, or it's just going to be like these automated buyers. But I don't believe that that's going to be the case. I believe that honestly, what Armand said is what I believe. The human interactions, the personal connection, the idea that we're curious, that we're really human beings at the heart of it, that we want to solve business problems, those are solved by people and not automated solutions. And so I actually don't have a great answer for it. It's more of a depends, because I don't really know what that's going to look like. But I spend a lot of time thinking about the future of it. I do know that human behaviors and the incentives behind them are really, really important and fundamentally will stand the test of time in this. And that will be,
I agree.
Be a future that I am living in.
That Todd guy, Todd Caprioni or whatever, he talks about the history of
Todd Capone
talks about the history of sales. And one of his messages is that what was true, 100 years ago, it's the same thing now. And there's some truth in that. Like when I look at salespeople across various industries that are the very best, they're super intelligent and they take a hand-to-hand combat against the market approach. When you look at private equity people, when you look at investment bankers, these are all salespeople as well. There's a very big sales component to their job. There's this level of intelligence, tenacity, drive, and emotional intelligence that they all have. And they're not relying on technology to make their life easier. They understand that what we're doing is really hard. They don't want to win in a space that you could automate emails to win. They want to do the hard thing. They believe winning requires hard work. And so I think AJ is right, where the tools that I appreciate are the ones that make my ability to figure out what interesting thing to say to someone easier. Research. I hate tools that are trying to tell me that we can say something as well as you can say it. No, you can't. There was that New Balance ad that the copywriting was so sharp. It had this ugly shoe on it, and it said, worn by supermodels in London and dads in Ohio. You walk by that in a store, it catches you. That's like sharp copywriting. No AI is going to write that type of copywriting. So I think it's humans doing human things, using technology to figure out what to say a little bit faster.
I like that. So you're just telling the difference. It's like tools that empower an individual versus tools that syndicate the mediocrity of the average individual.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Asad's $8,000 microphone makes him sound so crisp and clear. His points are he hits them home so great on this episode. Good job, Asad.
I think it is yeah, it's just really interesting. That's sort of like my fundamental point, which is like I said, what's the great Sam insight? Not the great insight, but the great Sam insight from this episode for my Sam super fans out there. And they did start a fan club. And Jenny from Ohio, and Leslie from Dallas, and Francesca from Puerto Rico. Thank you for writing in and starting the Sam Superfan fan club. Everybody's wearing a t-shirt. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, as you all know. But the point is, if a technology solution, if the more people use it, the less valuable it becomes. We have to look at the ultimate enterprise value of that solution, because but maybe that's not that interesting an insight. I don't know. I mean,
it is very interesting. What you're saying is the more people that buy this thing, the less it works. And so if you're buying a business, enterprise value matters when you buy or invest in a business. So if I'm buying this business today, I have to envision that it's going to be more valuable down the line. But the path to becoming more valuable anyway is hard for any business. But for this business, every additional customer gets less utility than the previous one. That's a really tough business to envision becoming a multi-billion-dollar business.
Is there any analogs to this in other industries that we can think of where they rose really quickly?
The counterpoint would be maybe it's just raising the bar. If everybody's doing the right kind of physical training, then winning a race is harder. If everybody's using, what are they called? A hyperbaric chamber, then everybody using a hyperbaric chamber makes it harder to win the race. But that's not the same thing as saying that the hyperbaric chamber itself becomes less effective. And the more people that use Outreach or SalesLoft, the less effective Outreach or SalesLoft are. So it does feel like a potentially meaningful distinction.
Whereas like the more people that use Salesforce doesn't become less useful to the additional company that buys Salesforce. Now, it is fair to say that if you were part of the first 100, 200, 300 people to ever buy a CRM, you had an edge on the market, right? There's a lot of alpha in being an early adopter and picking the right thing and getting utility out of it. At some point, that early mover advantage gets competed away. But by buying CRM, you can still get value out of it, and more customers don't make it less valuable, whereas more outreach in the market, more SalesLoft in the market makes the market a lot more noisier, and you've got more companies that are coming up. So it increases noise to the level where breaking through becomes just so difficult, and people just keep doing it this way. I'll give you guys this one other internal data point. So when headhunting candidates, we send messages to them on LinkedIn. Do you know how big our cadence is?
4 steps.
100,000.
One step. 92% open rate. 92% open rate. When we trained with them, they said the best in class response rate is 20%. So we went back and we're like, okay, guys, like this is all nonsense. These averages are brought down by horrible parties. Why don't we aim for 50%? We're right now at 60%, and our goal is to get to 80%. These things that you can aim
Your
for. Your
reply rate is 50%.
Our reply rate
60%.
right now is 50 to 60% on projects. On executive search is 75% plus. And we're sitting and thinking, how do you get to 80%?
And this is my point about like VC versus PEG, because it's like I could say, Asid, share your secret, but and you will share it with me offline, but we're not going to share it with these Topline bozos.
No, we're going to do it on the Slack channel.
I'll give you one insight.
We're doing it on the Slack channel.
Helped. No, I'll tell you now what one of the things that worked really well for us. They came to us. This is actually the vendor coming to us and saying 20% is the best response rate you can get. And the way to get it is write really small emails, short, say nothing. That's how you get a response rate. So we said, you know what? Why don't we just write long form emails? And we write long form because reps are used to getting reps and leaders, et cetera, get these short, vague things and they disregard them. Let's respect the person's time and say, we don't give you all the context up front. And if this is interesting, let's chat. And that's what got us to this high rate. And so we don't have cadences. We have one that goes out. If they don't respond, we cold call, and we usually connect with 6 out of 10 people on cold calls.
I mean, and that's exactly the point. Like a communication strategy cannot be venture scale. If everybody started sending long form emails like Asid is sending, they would stop working. The only successful strategy for communication is a boutique artisanal strategy, such as the one which is why STA is not raising $100 million round at $1 billion valuation.
Yeah.
You absolutely should share that email though with our Topline listeners.
I'm interested. We'll just Slack channel,
or just share it with Sam and I. Yeah. I think you just share it with Sam.
Let's share it in the Slack channel for all of the devoted.
It's very
we call them Topliners.
It won't even feel like rocket science. You look at that and you'll be like, okay. But the idea is that it just stands out. And so I think one of the other insights of this conversation is the alpha isn't doing the thing that no one else is doing.
Sam's so proud of himself for Topliners right now.
Topliners?
I'm proud of myself for just being so silly. I'm very silly. The super fan Sam Club, Francesca from Puerto Rico. She's my number one fan. She's my only fan.
We got some shout outs and wows.
And also wins of the week. Shout outs. Wins of the week.
Who's going?
I'll go. I'm going to shout out Tom Andrews, Senior Director of Systems and Insights for Pavilion. This week, we are rolling out what we call our GPS score for every member in Pavilion. GPS is Good Path Score. So we've done a tremendous amount of work over the last year figuring out what exactly drives retention. And we have an algorithm that has, I think, 5 different key elements, each of which has sub-elements to it. And every single person in Pavilion now gets a GPS score. Obviously, it decays over time if you don't do anything. And then we are breaking people out into automated cohort intervention. The interventions will not be automated. exactly to the point of what we're talking about. But the group of people that we need to reach out to and what we need them to do in order to get back on the good path will be a data set that we provide to our member success team. And so if there's a group of people that are some period away from the renewal and haven't been to an in-person event, that will be a group of people that are broken out, and we will reach out to those people through our member success and customer support team. If there's a group of people that haven't yet taken a class, and again, all of it will be part of getting them back on the good path. It's a really a foundational piece of work that incorporates a lot of integrations and a lot of data, and Tom Andrews did it. So Tom, thanks so much for all your leadership on this front. It's really exciting.
Shout out to Tom. Oh yeah, I'll go next. I want to talk about the newsletter because one of the things we want to do here is as we start new things, just taking people on the journey of doing this. So we started this newsletter because we felt that there were a million newsletters out there, but there was still space for a newsletter that helped our community of operators and founders that are early in growth stage try to separate the signal from the noise. So we wanted to try and do that. And we're now 8 editions in. It goes out to about 52,000 professionals. It has gone from, as Sam said, you start and the open rate is like 5%. And now I think close to 40% of people are opening it. And I love doing it because I'm sensitive and I need tons of affirmation. So after it goes out on
You're very
Thursdays,
good at it. Let me give you some affirmation. You're very good at it.
Thank you. We get tons of really interesting conversations going because of it. And so I really appreciate every person that opens it, reads it, shares it, talks about it, messages about it. It's just really fun to be doing these things with our group of, as Sam said, top liners. And so I really appreciate the love and support, and we'll keep sharing our journey with it as we go.
You're fantastic. You know what you should do, Austin, is at the top of like the next one, just say if you're enjoying these, forward it to someone you would know. We should 52,000 to 100,000 tomorrow.
I can't believe
this is why he's the commercial expert.
This is a growth hacker. Growth hacker over
so
here.
Good. I'm so good at it. So hacker? Good.
Yeah,
so good at it. All right. I'm going to continue the shout out that I gave a little bit earlier, Pattern Breakers, Michael Nichols Jr., but I will give the shout out to a different podcast. We do that sometimes here at Topline. We're equal opportunists. Lenny's podcast. Lenny interviews top product leaders and is expanded. He's done a fantastic, he's really well researched. Talking about research, guy knows his stuff. So he interviewed Mike Nichols Jr., I think it was sometime late June ahead of his book launch. If you heard the book, you're like, what is this about? Go listen to that episode. It's about an hour and a half. I listened to it straight. It was just so good. Check out that episode and then go purchase the book. And hopefully we'll have Mike on someday in the near future.
Yeah,
hint.
Soon.
That's on me. But make that happen.
Wow.
Great.
That's nice.
Well, this was another fun episode of Topline, episode 69. Thanks to all our Topliners out there. Give us 5 stars on the iTunes store. Thanks for joining the Sam Superfan fan club. We get a free t-shirt. And subscribe to the Topline newsletter.
Yes, please do.
I think you can go to joinpavilion.com/Topline. Let me see if that's true.
We'll put it in the show notes, actually. And you can also join the Slack community through the show notes.
Yeah, read the newsletter, Topline dash newsletter.
Forward the newsletter to someone that you think would enjoy it. That's my growth hacking tip.
If you wouldn't mind, could you forward it to about 52 of your closest friends?
Ooh,
thank you very much.
Let's get to 100,000.
Right, we'll talk to you on Thursday for Topline Hotline.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.